The prince, who always acted super polite in public, just got called out by one of his old maids. Now everyone sees him as a spoiled, nasty, royal brat. Keep watching to hear exactly what his ex-maid said about the real Prince Andrew. Suddenly, everything clicks. He didn't turn bad later. He was always mean. Charlotte Briggs was a young girl who dreamed of working for the royal family. She thought if you were kind to people, they'd be kind back. But she learned the hard way that some people are just poisonous. No matter how nicely you treat a snake egg, a snake still comes out. That's exactly what happened with Prince Andrew. Charlotte was only 21 when she started working for him. She expected fancy palace life and proud royal service. But instead, she got the job nobody else wanted. The reason was super clear. Behind the pretty walls of Buckingham Palace lived a guy who wasn't the nice, charming duke everyone thought. His own staff called him arrogant, rude, and totally crazy. In an interview with the Daily Mail, Charlotte didn't hold back at all. She said, "I don't care what Prince Andrew feels. He is a horrible, nasty man." She wasn't trying to be gentle. She was telling the raw truth after years of being treated like dirt. When her stories got out, the world finally saw how Andrew acted when no cameras were watching. Her first memories of him were of a lazy, spoiled guy who got mad super fast. She said Andrew would yell orders for stuff he could easily do himself. He was obsessed with curtains, those huge, heavy curtains that went from floor to ceiling. He could have pulled them shut with one hand, but nope, that was Charlotte's job. One time she left the tiniest gap between them, and he totally lost it. Andrew came storming out of his office, shouting and swearing down the hallway. "Can't you bloody do anything right?" he screamed, and made the young maid cry. Third, it showed the daily power trip the staff had to deal with. In Andrew's house, even tiny mistakes got you in big trouble. Every little thing could get you punished. Charlotte said she walked around the rooms scared of being noticed. "I did everything I could to avoid him," she said. You never knew when he'd show up, and his temper was even worse. But it wasn't just the anger that freaked her out. It was his weird, embarrassing demands. The most famous one was about his stuffed animals. To regular people, it sounded like a cute habit, a grown man who still loved teddy bears. To the maids who had to deal with it, it was a total nightmare. Andrew kept 72 teddy bears, plus a stuffed hippo and a black panther, and they had to be lined up perfectly like soldiers. Nobody was allowed to touch them without exact instructions. There were laminated sheets that showed exactly where each toy went, which one's in back, which one's in front, and his two favorite bears always had to sit on each side of his bed like guards. Charlotte said she spent a whole day just learning how to do it right. One wrong move, and he'd throw one of his huge tantrums. His bedroom looked like a museum of how fragile he was. The pillows with the royal crest had to be perfectly centered after the mattress was flipped. His pajamas had to be laid out perfectly, even on both sides. The stuffed animals got put on display during the day, taken off before he slept, and put back every morning. The staff, including Charlotte, kept wondering what kind of man needed all this, and what it said about him. The newspapers later loved these stories and called him a grown prince stuck acting like a little kid, making young maids calm his moods and guard his teddy bears. For Charlotte, it wasn't funny at all. It was like walking on eggshells every day, she said. The picture of a royal crying over curtains and teddy bears was the total opposite of the charming guy he pretended to be in public. Even worse was how he treated the other servants. Charlotte said he acted like staff were garbage, zero thanks or manners, totally different from Charles, Edward, and even Prince Philip, who she said were respectful and gentlemanly. Andrew was in his own league of mean, and she wasn't making it up. Other ex-staff said the same things. One former maid remembered having to run across the room to close curtains, while Andrew stood right next to them, just so he could remind her who was boss. Another talked about how cold and stuck-up he was, even in small talk. And the craziest part? He didn't even have a super busy royal job like his brothers and sister. He wasn't going to be king. His job was mostly showing up and looking important. But he still acted like everyone had to worship him. What Charlotte told the world wasn't just about a guy with anger issues or baby habits. It was about a clear pattern. A man who loved making people feel small, who saw helping him as total surrender, who made the palace feel poisonous and awful to work in. And this wasn't even the start of his story. Actually, scratch that. The bad stuff started way earlier. Even Charlotte knew that. It all began when he was really little. From the very beginning, Andrew acted different from his brothers and sister, and not in a good way. Charles was quiet and loved books. Anne was stubborn, but got stuff done. Andrew seemed way less nice. Even as a toddler, palace staff noticed he was cruel when he played. He didn't just want attention, he demanded it, and he got it by picking on people who couldn't fight back. One of his favorite games was messing with the Queen's super serious guards. Most little kids would be scared of them, but Andrew would walk by making faces and mocking how still they stood, trying to make them laugh or move. When they ignored him, he got madder and did worse stuff to force them to notice him. This wasn't cute kid stuff. It was a little boy who thought rules didn't apply to him, not even to the guards protecting his family. But the worst cruelty wasn't just to people. He was mean to animals too. People who worked there said he'd kick the family dogs and laugh when they cried out in pain, or hit horses' legs with sticks just for fun. The stable workers were so upset that one day they grabbed little Andrew, shoved his head into a pile of horse poop, and covered him with fresh dung to teach him a lesson. It was a gross punishment, but they felt he totally deserved it. And that wasn't the only time staff broke the rules to punish him. Another time he kept teasing a palace footman so much that the guy finally punched him and gave him a black eye. When the footman said sorry and offered to quit, the Queen said no. She wouldn't accept his resignation. Even the Queen seemed to think Andrew had been so cruel that getting hit was fair. His mean streak didn't stop with staff or animals. He bullied his little brother Edward, too. Every time they hung out, it turned into a fight to be boss. He'd grab cakes away, push him hard, leave bruises. It wasn't normal brother rough play. It was about controlling and hurting. People who saw it said he loved feeling more powerful. At school, everybody knew his reputation. At his prep school, and later at Gordonstoun, kids called him Baby Grumpling because of his tantrums, and the snigger because he laughed when he hurt people's feelings. He wasn't the sweet royal prince everyone wanted. He was the spoiled, smirky bully. And when he got older, his attitude didn't grow up. It just got meaner. People told stories of him pulling zippers on maids' dresses at parties, or pushing their faces into food and yelling, "Smell the parsnip," like a bully. On camping trips, he'd rip down other kids' tent covers and throw them in rivers so they got soaked and cold. To Anne, Drew, it was just a joke. To everyone else, it was pure humiliation. The staff who worked for him said it best. He didn't talk politely, like a royal kid should. He'd throw stuff on the floor, swear, and bark, "Pick that up." The servants were used to being proper and calm, so hearing a little prince talk like that shocked them. They didn't see a naughty kid. They saw a tiny dictator. By the time he was old enough to wear a uniform, everyone inside the palace already knew his reputation. He wasn't the handsome future king like Charles or the tough but good Anne. He was the one staff hated seeing coming, the kid they called impossible. A boy whose fun was being cruel, who thought respect meant fear, and whose ego just kept growing. Everyone hoped he'd grow out of it, but, sadly, he only got worse. By the late 1990s, his perfect public mask was cracking. The scandals weren't just about bad temper anymore. Now it was money, girls, and an attitude he couldn't hide. While Charles was trying to fix his image after Diana died, Andrew was falling deeper into stuff that would ruin him forever. One of the first big red flags was money. He spent like crazy using royal perks and got into shady business deals. News came out that he was making deals with sketchy guys, some even being investigated in other countries. The palace tried to hide most stories, but people kept hearing about cash for access. Andrew setting up meetings for rich businessmen and getting paid big money for it. The palace said it wasn't true, but proof kept showing up. Along with the money came his thing for much younger women. After splitting with Sarah Ferguson, he couldn't drop the image of a middle-aged guy chasing girls half his age. He showed off girlfriends who were models and party girls. Lots of them barely 20. His driver once said he saw almost 10 different women coming and going at Andrew's place in Bangkok. It wasn't just embarrassing for the family, it was creepy. Newspapers started calling him Randy Andy, and the nickname stuck for years. Turning the Queen's son into a joke. Even inside the palace, people whispered that he couldn't stay away from bad company. Then came the friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, everyone knows about now. Way before Epstein got arrested the second time, Andrew was hanging out his New York mansion, his private island, and on his jet. Pictures showed Andrew walking with Epstein in New York, after Epstein had already been to jail once and Andrew never explained it properly. The problem wasn't just hanging out with a bad guy. Most powerful people ran away fast, but Andrew kept calling Epstein a good friend and said he didn't regret it. That choice destroyed him later. But Epstein wasn't the only dark cloud. Inside the palace, the staff were keeping their own list of complaints. Maids said they felt like slaves in the old days instead of normal workers. One maid told how Andrew made her run up 7 flights of stairs to close curtains he was standing right next to, just to show he was in charge. She said the verbal abuse never stopped and was meant to break people down. Another remembered him yelling because a teddy bear was slightly wrong and saying nobody but him could ever touch them. His treatment of the Queen's staff was so bad that some started calling him the Prince of Darkness behind his back. Andrew didn't just give orders, he made people feel worthless. Gardeners said he screamed at them if one leaf was out of place. Drivers said he lost it if the car was 5 minutes late. One old assistant said working for Andrew felt like being a human punching bag. These stories stayed secret for years, but slowly leaked to newspapers, each one making him look worse. The public saw his attitude on overseas trips, too. He was supposed to represent Britain nicely as trade envoy. Instead, he yelled at hotel staff in other countries, treated waiters like dirt, and demanded rooms fit for a dictator. In the Middle East, he supposedly made a hotel worker cry by screaming about the room temperature. The diplomats who traveled with him said cleaning up his rude outbursts became part of his private life just made people more disgusted. After Sarah Ferguson got caught taking money to set up meetings with him, they stayed living together even though separated, both using royal perks while embarrassing the family. People said they hid behind their titles while acting in ways that would ruin normal people. By the early 2000s, Andrew was totally unpopular. Nobody respected him like Charles, admired him like Anne, or even put up with him like Edward. Everyone made fun of him. His nickname changed to Air Miles Andy when people found out he used taxpayer money for private jets and helicopters for silly short trips. Again, the picture was awful. A guy addicted to luxury who didn't care how out of touch he looked, while regular people struggled with money. Every year, more palace workers spoke out. They described a man obsessed with fame, dying to be seen with celebrities, and completely clueless about how bad he seemed. Even at family parties, he acted superior and stuck out. Princess Diana once said Andrew was the least smart but most spoiled of the Queen's sons, and even people who didn't like Diana agreed. All the warning signs were there: spoiled attitude, anger, bad friends, crazy spending, but nobody stopped him. His mom, the Queen, always protected him, so he kept going deeper into trouble with no punishment until the Epstein mess blew up and pulled him down too. That's when the world saw him not just as a bratty royal, but as something much darker. The scandal that came next didn't just wreck his name, it broke his place in the royal family forever. The big turning point was 2010. Jeffrey Epstein had just gotten out of jail for crimes with an underage girl. Most important people stayed far away. Andrew did the opposite. He got photographed walking and laughing with Epstein in Central Park like nothing was wrong. That one picture exploded everywhere. For the first time, people saw the Queen's son hanging out with a convicted sex offender. Then in 2015 came Virginia Giuffre. She said Epstein trafficked her when she was a teen and forced her to sleep with powerful men, including Andrew. 3 different times, all set up by Epstein's girlfriend Ghislaine Maxwell. The worst proof was a photo. Andrew with his arm around 17-year-old Virginia, Ghislaine smiling behind them. Andrew said he never met her, and even hinted the photo was fake, but experts checked and said it was real. His denials just made him look guilty and desperate. The palace freaked out. For years they protected him with vague statements and the Queen's power to quiet critics. But new evidence kept coming. Flight records showed him on Epstein's plane. People remembered seeing them together in London, New York, and the Caribbean. Every new fact hurt the royal image more. By 2019, the pressure was too much. Andrew agreed to do a big BBC interview to clear everything up. It turned into one of the worst interviews ever. He gave excuses that were so ridiculous the whole world laughed at him. He said the night Virginia claimed they met at a London club and danced, he was actually at Pizza Express in Woking with his daughter. He kept repeating it like it proved everything. The internet went crazy with memes. Then he talked about sweating. Virginia said he was sweating a lot while dancing. Andrew said he had a medical condition from the war that stopped him sweating back then. It sounded so fake that nobody believed him. Worst of all was his attitude. Instead of feeling sorry for Epstein's victims, he only talked about himself. He said staying at Epstein's house after jail was convenient, and the only reason he did it was to break up with him in person. To everyone watching, it sounded like he was making excuses for being friends with a monster. People hated it instantly. They called the interview a disaster, a train wreck, a total car crash. Even the Queen couldn't save him this time. Days later, Andrew said he was stepping back from all royal jobs, basically kicked out. For the first time ever, a senior royal got banished because of scandal. But it didn't end there. Charities dropped him, universities took away his honorary titles, military units kicked him out. He went from the Queen's favorite son to poison for the whole monarchy. Virginia kept going. In 2021, she sued him in America for sexual assault. His lawyers tried every trick to stop the case, saying she had no proof, and he had legal protection. It didn't work. The judge said the trial could happen. That meant Andrew would either face her in court or pay to make it go away. In early 2022, he paid her around $12 million to settle. The palace said it wasn't admitting guilt, but most people thought he just bought his way out. Everyone wondered where he got that money. Lots guessed the Queen quietly paid to save the family name. By Prince Philip's funeral, you could see Andrew walking alone behind his brothers and sisters. At the Queen's Jubilee, he wasn't allowed on the famous balcony. At her funeral, he had to wear a normal suit, while his siblings wore military uniforms. He looked totally left out. Every moment felt like payback to everyone he'd hurt. As soon as Charles became king, he took away Andrew's last honorary military titles and said he could never represent the crown again. Royal life slammed shut for him. Even his bodyguards got downgraded, so he had to beg for protection like a regular person. To Andrew, it felt like the worst humiliation ever. To Charles, it was like cutting out a sick part to save the rest. At Charles's coronation in 2023, the cameras showed everything. Andrew showed up in a plain suit, like a distant cousin nobody wanted there. His siblings walked proud in fancy robes. Andrew walked awkward and angry. Experts said you could see the huge gap. Charles barely lured. At him, William wouldn't make eye contact. Even Harry, with all his own drama, looked more part of the family than Andrew. It happened again at Easter Church that year. Charles and William walked ahead, smiling at people while Andrew trailed behind. Ignored even his own nieces and nephews, ignored him. Every look and step screamed the same thing. Andrew had become the royal family's ghost. But being kicked out of public royal life didn't stop new stories from coming. More old staff spoke up and made people hate him even more. One said he'd leave dirty clothes all over the floor and expect maids to pick up without complaining. Another said he demanded baths at exact temperatures and yelled if it wasn't perfect. A valet remembered being told to iron Andrew's shoelaces flat. The details sounded ridiculous, but they showed a man totally lost in his own importance, completely out of touch with normal life.